Nigeria, at least 414,000 people were displaced and another 30 killed by a devastating flood in Maiduguri, the Borno State capital, on Tuesday. The National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, said the flood began after the Alau Dam overflowed following heavy rains, leading to the town's worst flooding in 30 years. According to United Nations Human Rights Refugee Council and Maiduguri Metropolitan Council residents, of course, according to NEMA, more than 23,000 households have been hit by the rapid rise of waters. The flood also washed away 80% of animals at the Sandakiarimi Park Zoo and damaged houses, schools, as well as commercial and worship centers. Responding to the development, President Bola Tinubu expressed deep concerns and tasked relevant government agencies to expedite rescue efforts, while Vice President Kashim Shettima arrived in the Borno capital to conduct an on-the-ground assessment of the floods. The governor of Borno State, Babangana Zulum, announced that more than a third of Maiduguri was flooded, which affected an estimated 1 million people following the heavy flooding. Zulu added that the federal government allocated 3 billion naira for the rehabilitation of the victims, adding that the funds would be used to provide food and other essential supplies, as well as support long-term strategies, including health monitoring to prevent disease outbreaks. And of course, joining me in the studio, I have both of them here. Of course, I have Justice Ojeno, is a lawyer and a legal practitioner. Good to have you on the show this evening.
Pleasure to join you.
Fantastic. And of course, I have policy analyst Nelson Ekujimi. Nelson.
Thank you for having me. Good evening, Nigerians.
All right, I'll begin with you, Nelson. Now, NEMA says 30 dead, 1 million residents affected, 414,000 displaced in Borno State. Can Borno ever recover from this?
Well, I think one thing we can be sure of is that a life lost can never be recovered.
Absolutely.
So for me, it's a sad development. I'm horrified when the news broke and we saw the pictures. I felt it like a human being because these are Nigerians, these are human beings.
Absolutely.
And they have been displaced from their homes, from their livelihoods.
And it comes as a surprise.
Yes, and they are even under the threat of the outbreak of diseases because, you know, the water that flowed from the dam, you can be rest assured, sewages would have been, you know, would have spilled out. Yes. Burial grounds will have also, bodies will have been. So it's a sad development, and my condolences to the government and people of Nigeria, Borno State, and the government. And I just hope that the rescue efforts will be intensified to give them succor. But what they have lost, I'm not sure we can ever recover.
All right. Now, Justice Ojeno, Nigeria at 64, you know, haven't we reached where monumental disasters of this magnitude, you know, could have been contained if the right mechanisms were in place?
Okay, I also have to, like Mr. Nelson, commiserate in particular with the families that have lost and the various governments, both the state and federal government. Have we arrived at a situation where things like this will not happen? For me, I actually classify this as an act of God. To a large extent, there has been a drought, sort of, in that neck of the wood, and it so happened that there was too much rainfall this time. It's not that the facilities were that weak, even though we cannot even also blame the present government or the government before it for what happened, because this dam was built as far back as 1984, more than 40 years ago now. That maybe the succeeding government should have reinforced it or things like that. Maybe if that concern was raised by succeeding governments and they did not do it, then we can blame them for it. But the present government, I do not think that the present government can take the lion's share of the blame if we are going to attribute any of it to the works or the activities of governments.
I'm still emphasizing on the structure. Now, we know that this particular part of the world, we don't naturally experience natural disasters like that. It doesn't come rapidly like other countries. Countries like Japan right now, where I know they're doing some, you know, trying to infuse technology with having houses that doesn't have foundation, so that when the earthquake occurs, they can actually find a way around it. Since we don't have much of those occurrences in this part of the world, why can't we just try as much as possible to reduce the risk to the barest minimum? It's exactly what I was trying to put across.
Fully. I agree with you that whatever it is that we are building, we should build to stand the test of time. We should build to stand the test of the elements. For example, this rain that overran its course. Of course, it's not the first time that dam is giving a problem, but it's the first time that it's actually breaking down this way, because what happened this time actually surpassed normal expectations and capacity.
I can understand. Now, Nelson, very quickly, according to the federal government, the dam didn't collapse, but it struggled to handle the excess water from nearby tributaries, right? Now, causing overflow into surrounding areas. Now, another report is saying that the dam received 762 million naira in budgetary allocations over the past 12 years. Yet, the dam has remained in bad shape, right, raising questions about fiscal responsibility and oversight. Now, how do we reconcile this?
Well, I think first and foremost is that we have to investigate if the dam collapsed or not, because the federal government has come out to say the dam didn't collapse. The dam overflowed. Yeah. And you and I know that what we're experiencing now is the consequences of climate change, where you have excessive heat, excessive rainfall. And don't also forget that before now, NEMA has come up with warnings to several states, even including our dear Lagos,
to be on the alert.
To be on the alert, yeah, that people should move. So I think it's something we should not be in a hurry, you know, to apportion blames, but rather we should investigate what could have caused it. If it's about the climate change, what are those activities that we are engaged in that is, you know, engendering climate change, you know, fatalities? Because for me, this is an accident that the human activities has contributed in no small measure, you know, to happening. So the advocacy, the clamor for climate change, you know, mechanisms is something we need to take seriously, because it's a threat to our human existence.
Should we probe the 762 million it has received over the past 12 years?
Why not? Because it's public funds. So if a public fund has been expended somewhere, it is imperative on us to ask questions. Has it been used judiciously? Okay. What is the end result? So there's nothing wrong in this.
Before we ride on from this topic, Justice, I'll put the question same to you again, because now people would say this is not the time to start probing, because they have to deal with and contain the situation at the moment, because it's always like that. The rhetoric just plays down and we forget about it. Shouldn't we go back and actually understand why monies were budgeted for this dam and yet it's still remaining in bad shape for the past 12 years?
Definitely. We have to remember that budgetary allocations are actually law. That's why it's called the appropriation. It moves from being a bill to being an act once it is signed by the president. So, yeah, it was appropriated, but was it actually now assigned and given to the agencies involved to actually expend on the projects? If that was done, then we have to now probe into nitty-gritty to the last kobo. The legislature now has to do its work in this regard to hold people accountable.
All right. All right, now, thank you very much. Well,